I was brushing my teeth when I smelled something weird, like burning plastic, but I lived alone. I ran to the kitchen, heart pounding, only to find smoke pouring out from the hallway. Flames licked up the walls near the laundry room. I couldn't believe how fast it was spreading. I screamed and grabbed my phone, but the screen just blinked. No signal, no Wi-Fi. The front door handle was hot. I wrapped my sleeve around my hand and yanked it open. The porch was engulfed in flames. I had to jump from the back window to escape. Landing on the muddy ground, I scraped my arm and twisted my ankle, but I was alive. I turned to look at my home, my memories, and watched it burn into black ash. Fire trucks wailed in the distance, but by the time they arrived, my house was nearly gone. Wrapped in a blanket, I sat on the curb trembling, my life reduced to smoke. A firefighter approached and asked if anyone else was inside. I shook my head, still in shock. Paramedics checked my injuries, but I kept staring at the burning shell that used to be home. The police asked questions. I told them I had no idea how the fire started. A neighbor handed me water. Her eyes were wide. "We thought you weren't gonna make it." I spent the night in a shelter. The mattress was hard, but at least I was safe. Morning came with no home, no clothes, just me, a blanket, and a broken phone. I called my sister from a borrowed phone. She cried and told me to come stay. I moved into her guest room, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw flames. Fire officials called. They suspected an electrical short near the dryer caused the fire. They said it spread unusually fast. Too fast. That scared me more than the fire itself. I visited the remains of my house. Everything was blackened, melted, and unrecognizable. I found a piece of my mom's old locket buried in the rubble. I cried hard. Insurance started asking questions when I bought appliances, if I had smoke detectors, photos of proof. I had nothing to show them. Everything was gone. My laptop, photos, even my fire plan. They offered me temporary housing, but it felt cold. Nothing felt like home anymore. At my sister's, I started journaling every night, trying to process the trauma that haunted me. The nightmares wouldn't stop. I saw fire everywhere, even in my dreams. A therapist told me I had survivor's guilt, and maybe even PTSD. I nodded through tears. My job gave me 2 weeks off, but when I returned, I couldn't concentrate at all. I'd flinch at the smell of toast or a flicker of candlelight. My nerves were shot. I started researching fire safety like crazy. I wanted to make sure it never happened again. I watched videos, joined online survivor forums, and spoke to other victims. Their stories made me cry. One girl said her dog barked and saved her. Another lost her whole family. I felt lucky. I started a blog, Ashes and Answers, to share my journey, and people actually began reading it. Readers sent me messages like, "Your story saved my life," and "Thank you for being brave." A college invited me to speak about fire safety. I almost said no, but something told me to go. Standing on stage, I shook. But when I looked out and saw nodding heads, I felt purpose. That night, I got an email from a firefighter who read my blog. He said I inspired him. His name was Jake. He had helped with my fire but didn't recognize me until the blog. We started emailing, then texting, then talking. I found myself smiling again for the first time in months. Jake invited me to the fire station. I was nervous, but I went. He showed me the engine that came to my house. I touched the side, it gave me chills. He told me they'd almost given up until they saw someone jump from the window. That was me. We sat in the break room, drinking coffee, and talking about everything: loss, healing, and finding peace. Jake wasn't just kind, he listened. And he never once told me to get over it. We started seeing each other more often. Slowly, laughter returned to my life. I moved out of my sister's and into a small apartment near the river. It was mine. My blog grew into a website. I began posting interviews, safety tips, and recovery advice. Then one night, it happened. I smelled burning plastic again. My heart raced. I froze. But this time, it was just someone grilling on their balcony. I breathed and reminded myself, I'm safe. Still, I bought a smoke detector for every room, plus a fire extinguisher for the kitchen. Jake helped me install everything. He even taught me how to use an extinguisher properly. My fear turned into preparedness. I began to feel strong, like I had control again. One day, a TV show contacted me. They wanted to feature my story on national news. I almost fainted from shock, but I said yes. Maybe someone would learn something from it. The interview was emotional. I cried on camera, but they called me brave and inspiring. After the episode aired, messages poured in. Survivors, firefighters, even teens asking for safety tips. I realized something big. My story wasn't just tragedy. It had become a tool to help others. I started a YouTube channel sharing home safety tips, survivor stories, and self-care advice after trauma. People began subscribing. The comment section was filled with support, questions, and stories like mine. I held my first in-person workshop at a local library. 10 people came. It meant everything. I met a woman who lost her son in a fire. We hugged and cried together. My voice shook as I spoke, but they listened, and some even thanked me afterward. Jake came to every workshop. He'd set up chairs and say, "You're doing something important, babe. I never imagined I'd find love after loss, but life is strange like that." I began volunteering at shelters, helping fire victims get food, clothes, and emergency kits. We built fire survival kits and passed them out for free. People were so grateful. I got a letter from a young girl who said, "You made me feel less alone. Sometimes I still cried at night." Healing wasn't a straight line, but I kept going. I wrote a book called Out of the Flames. It became a small bestseller. The book tour was exhausting but worth it. I met hundreds of survivors face to face. Each handshake felt like a piece of my heart connecting to someone else's. I got an award from the local fire department. Jake smiled so wide it made me laugh. He proposed the same night, under the stars, at the spot where we first talked. I said yes through tears and laughter. The fire took so much, but it couldn't take everything. We had a small wedding. My dress had tiny flame-shaped sequins sewn into the hem. Instead of wedding gifts, guests donated fire alarms to low-income families. We took our honeymoon in the mountains far from city lights, but finally at peace. Back home, we launched our nonprofit, Phoenix Hearts, helping families rebuild after fire tragedies. We hosted annual events with firemen, survivors, and counselors to help families emotionally recover. One night, I visited the ruins of my old house again. It was cleared, now just grass. I planted a rose bush there, whispered thank you to the ground, and walked away. We bought a new home together, open kitchen, wide hallways, and smoke detectors everywhere. We hosted family dinners. The laughter of kids and clinking of glasses filled the air. I sometimes stared at the fire pit in our yard, hypnotized but not afraid anymore. Jake always stood beside me, holding my hand through every shadow that tried to return. A teen once asked me, if you could go back, would you erase the fire? I paused, then said, no, because it made me who I am and led me here. The fire was my ending, but it also became my beginning. Now, I wasn't just a survivor. I was a warrior, a teacher, a mother, a friend. We had our first baby, a girl. We named her Hope because that's what she represented. Hope giggled the first time she saw a candle. I didn't panic, I smiled and blew it out. Jake and I made bedtime stories about fire fairies and brave people who saved the day. We taught Hope fire drills before she could even write her name. Our house was filled with alarms, escape ladders, and emergency lights prepared, but still full of joy. Sometimes I shared my scars with new survivors, physical, emotional, and all the lessons in between. We hosted annual Phoenix Nights, lighting lanterns to honor those lost and celebrate those who lived. People from all over came to watch and remember. Every glowing light held a story. I looked around, holding Jake's hand, and whispered to myself, I survived, but I truly lived. And when I looked up at the sky full of lanterns, I finally felt whole again.